The most dangerous enemy you will ever face is not the one standing in front of you. It's the one sitting quietly in your own mind. That voice that tells you you're not ready, not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough. That voice has ended more dreams than failure ever could. And if you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. Let me slow this down for a moment, because this is where everything begins. Before the job, before the money, before the applause, before the success anyone ever sees, there is a thought. Every single outcome in your life can be traced back to something you told yourself quietly, consistently over time. That's not philosophy, that's reality. You don't wake up one day living a certain life by accident. You wake up living the life your thoughts have been rehearsing. See, the mind is powerful, but it's also obedient. It doesn't argue with you, it takes orders. If you keep telling it that you're tired, it'll make sure you stay tired. If you keep telling it that you're behind, it'll make sure you always feel late. And if you keep telling it that you can't, it'll work overtime to prove you right. That's the danger. Your mind will support whatever story you feed it, whether that story builds you or buries you. Most people don't lose because they're not talented. They lose because they think losing thoughts. They wake up already defeated, already doubting, already negotiating with fear. They look at their circumstances and let those circumstances define what they believe is possible. But circumstances don't have the final word. Your thinking does. Life doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your dominant thoughts. Now understand this. Negative thinking is sneaky. It doesn't come crashing in like a storm. It shows up as reason. It sounds responsible. It says, be realistic. It says, what if it doesn't work? It says, maybe this just isn't your time. And before you know it, you've talked yourself out of effort, out of growth, out of faith. You didn't fail. You never really showed up. You have to realize something about successful people. They don't think differently because they're successful. They're successful because they learned how to think differently when nothing around them looked promising. They trained their minds before the world ever rewarded them. When others were rehearsing excuses, they were rehearsing belief. When others were focused on what could go wrong, they were locked in on what must go right. And here's the part that might make you uncomfortable. Your thoughts are your responsibility. Not your parents, not your past, not the economy, not the people who doubted you. At some point, you have to stop blaming what happened and start taking control of what happens next. You can't pray for a better life while thinking like a defeated person. Those two things don't work together. Every day, you're voting for the kind of life you're going to live. With your thoughts, with your self-talk, with the conversations you have when no one else is listening. Are you voting for growth or are you voting for fear? Are you feeding vision or are you feeding doubt? Because whatever you feed will grow. That's the law. Don't wait for confidence to show up before you change your thinking. Confidence is built after you take control, not before. You don't need to feel strong to think strong. You need to decide that you're done entertaining thoughts that don't serve your future. Decide that every time doubt shows up, it's not getting a seat at the table. Decide that fear can talk, but it doesn't get to drive. This doesn't mean you won't feel pressure. It doesn't mean you won't feel tired. It means you won't let those feelings run your life. Discipline begins in the mind. Consistency begins in the mind. Greatness begins in the mind. And once you master that battlefield, the outside world has no choice but to catch up. Because when you control your thoughts, you control your direction. And when you control your direction, you control your destiny. Let me tell you something most people never stop to consider. Negative thinking is not who you are. It's something you learned. And anything you learn can be unlearned. That's important because too many people walk around believing their doubts are facts, believing their fear is wisdom, believing their limits are permanent. They're not. They're habits. And habits can be broken. Think about it. Nobody is born thinking small. A child doesn't hesitate to dream big. A child doesn't overanalyze failure. Somewhere along the way, life happens. Disappointment shows up. Someone says you can't. Something doesn't work out. And slowly, quietly, negative thinking becomes familiar, comfortable, automatic. You don't even notice it anymore. You just react. That's how habits work. You don't wake up one morning and decide to doubt yourself. You practice it over and over. You practice hesitation. You practice excuses. You practice worst-case scenarios. And eventually, Your mind starts doing it without being asked. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But staying there, that's a choice. Here's the danger. When something becomes a habit, it starts feeling like the truth. You say, "This is just how I am." No, that's just how you've been thinking. You confuse repetition with reality. You confuse familiarity with fact. And that's how potential stays trapped. Negative thinking feeds on comfort. It likes routine. It likes predictability. It wants you to stay where you are because where you are feels safe, even if it's painful. Growth requires uncertainty, and negative thinking hates uncertainty. So it convinces you that staying stuck is smarter than taking a risk. It calls fear being realistic. But realism without vision is just limitation wearing a suit and tie. Understand this, habits don't change with motivation. They change with awareness and discipline. You have to catch the thought before it finishes the sentence. You have to challenge it instead of accepting it. When your mind says, "I'm not good enough," you don't argue emotionally, you respond intentionally. You say, "That's a habit talking, not the truth." At first it will feel uncomfortable. Of course it will. You're interrupting a pattern that's been running your life. Your mind will resist. It will try to pull you back to what's familiar. Stay with it. Repetition works both ways. Just like you practice doubt, you can practice belief. Just like you practice fear, you can practice courage. And don't wait until the environment changes. Habits don't break when life gets easier. They break when you get stronger. You don't need perfect conditions to think better. You need commitment. You need consistency. You need to decide that you are no longer available for thoughts that shrink you. Pay attention to your language. Pay attention to what you say after "I am." Those two words are powerful. If you keep saying, "I'm bad at this, I always fail, I never get ahead," your mind listens. It takes notes. And it builds a life around those instructions. Change the habit, and you change the direction. His isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about refusing to let negativity run on autopilot. It's about choosing progress over comfort, discipline over drama, truth over old patterns. Because the moment you realize negative thinking is just a habit, not a life sentence, is the moment you take your power back. Let me be clear with you about fear, because fear has fooled a lot of good people. Fear is not wisdom. Fear is not protection. Fear is a storyteller, and it's a liar. It dresses itself up as logic, so you'll listen to it. It sounds calm, reasonable, even intelligent. But don't get it twisted. Fear's job is not to keep you safe, it's to keep you still. Fear doesn't say, "Don't do it because you'll fail." That would be too obvious. Instead, it says, "Wait." It says, "Not yet." It says, "Let's be smart about this." And while you're waiting, life keeps moving. Opportunities don't pause. Time doesn't slow down. And slowly, that waiting turns into a habit of hesitation. Fear always asks the same question, what if it doesn't work? But it never asks the other side of that question, what if it does? Fear only shows you one future, the worst one. It plays a movie in your mind where everything goes wrong, where you look foolish, where you lose, where you're judged. And if you watch that movie long enough, you'll start acting like it's already happened. That's how fear wins. Not by force, but by suggestion. Here's the truth most people never learn. Fear feels real. It isn't accurate. It's a prediction without evidence. It's imagination without discipline. And the moment you start treating fear like fact, you surrender your power. You stop making decisions based on purpose and start making them based on comfort. Understand this. Every meaningful step you will ever take in your life will come with fear attached to it. Every promotion, every dream, every leap of faith. If you wait for fear to disappear before you move, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is movement in its presence. Fear loves to remind you of your past. It brings up old mistakes, old losses, old embarrassments. It says, "Remember what happened last time," but fear never tells you what you learned last time. It never tells you how much stronger you are now. It never tells you that growth comes from getting back up, not from staying down. And let me tell you something important. Fear only has authority if you give it permission. It can speak, but it doesn't get to decide. It can warn, but it doesn't get to rule. The problem isn't that fear shows up. The problem is that too many people hand it the steering wheel. Discipline is how you expose fear for what it really is. When you move despite fear, fear starts losing its voice. When you act, fear gets quiet. When you take one step forward, fear has to adjust its story. It can't control someone who refuses to stay still. Stop asking fear for advice. Fear has never built anything great. Fear has never changed a life. Fear has never opened a door. It only guards the ones you're supposed to walk through. Growth lives on the other side of fear, not the comfort zone it tries to keep you in. You don't need to eliminate fear to succeed. You need to outgrow it. You need to decide that purpose matters more than panic, that calling matters more than comfort. Fear will always try to negotiate with you, but success demands commitment. So the next time fear speaks, and it will, don't argue with it, don't run from it, and don't obey it. Let it talk while you move anyway. Because the moment you stop listening to fear's lies is the moment you start walking toward your future. Let me tell you why discipline matters. Because discipline is the difference between people who dream and people who deliver. Doubt lives loud, emotional, dramatic. It shows up when you're tired, when results are slow, when nobody's clapping for you. Discipline doesn't talk much. Discipline just shows up. And every time it does, doubt loses ground. Most people think they need more confidence to move forward. That's not true. Confidence is a reward, not a requirement. Discipline comes first. Discipline is what gets you out of bed when motivation didn't make the trip. Discipline is what keeps you working when the feeling is gone. And when discipline is present, doubt doesn't get to vote. Doubt feeds on inconsistency. The more you start and stop, the louder it gets. The more promises you break to yourself, the more doubt starts believing it knows you. It says, you always quit. You never finish. Why try again? And if you don't have discipline, you'll start agreeing with it. But the moment you do one small thing consistently, doubt gets nervous. Because discipline exposes doubt as weak. Here's the truth. Discipline is self-respect in action. It's you telling yourself, I said I would, so I will. Not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, but because you decided. And decisions backed by discipline create momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief silences doubt. You don't defeat doubt by arguing with it in your head. You defeat it by working. Doubt hates effort. Doubt hates routine. Doubt hates structure. Because discipline doesn't need permission from your emotions. Discipline doesn't wait until you feel ready. Discipline moves first, and feelings catch up later. Look at your life and ask yourself honestly, where is doubt loudest? That's usually where discipline is weakest. Not because you're incapable, but because you've been negotiating with discomfort instead of commanding your actions. Discipline ends negotiation. There's no debate, there's no drama, there's just execution. And don't misunderstand discipline. Discipline is not punishment, it's freedom. It frees you from excuses. It frees you from overthinking. It frees you from the constant cycle of starting over. When you know you're going to show up no matter what, doubt loses its leverage. It can't scare someone who's already committed. Discipline is built in private. Nobody sees it. Nobody applauds it. That's why most people avoid it. But the rewards show up in public. Strength, confidence, respect, results. Those are side effects of discipline done quietly over time. Doubt, on the other hand, wants attention. It wants you to sit with it, analyze it, entertain it. Discipline doesn't give it that luxury. Start small, but be consistent. Discipline doesn't require a grand gesture. It requires a daily one. One promise kept today makes the next one easier tomorrow. And every time you keep a promise to yourself, you rebuild trust with yourself. That trust is what doubt fears most. There will be days when discipline feels heavy. Good. That means it's working. Growth has weight. Responsibility has weight. Purpose has weight. But that weight builds strength. Doubt, meanwhile, collapses under pressure. It can't survive sustained effort. Stop waiting to feel confident. Confidence is built by evidence, and discipline creates evidence. Evidence that you can be relied on. Evidence that you don't quit when it gets uncomfortable. Evidence that you are becoming who you said you would be. And once discipline becomes your standard, doubt doesn't disappear, but it doesn't matter anymore. Because discipline doesn't ask if you believe, you move anyway. Let me clear something up right now, because this one stops more people than failure ever will. You do not need confidence to beg. Confidence is not the entrance fee. Action is. Too many people are sitting on the sidelines of their own lives waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel sure, waiting to feel fearless. And while they're waiting, opportunity keeps passing them by. Confidence is built, not found. It doesn't fall from the sky. It doesn't show up because you thought about something long enough. It shows up after you move, after you try, after you step forward while your hands are still shaking. Action comes first. Confidence follows. Most people have it backwards. They say, once I believe in myself, then I'll act. But belief doesn't grow in stillness. Belief grows in motion. Every time you take action despite uncertainty, you send a message to yourself that says, I can be trusted. And trust is the foundation of confidence. Think about it. How did you learn to walk? You didn't wait until you felt confident. You stood up, you fell down, you got back up, and you did it again. Confidence came later. The same rule applies now. The difference is, as adults, we let fear interrupt the process. We overthink. We calculate risk. We imagine embarrassment. And we convince ourselves that not moving is safer than moving imperfectly. But here's the truth. Hesitation costs more than failure ever will. Failure teaches. Hesitation drains. Failure gives you feedback. Hesitation gives you regret. And regret is heavy. It sits with you at night. It asks questions you don't want to answer. Action, even imperfect, action frees you from that weight. You're not lacking confidence, you're lacking proof. And proof only comes from doing the work, one action at a time, one uncomfortable step at a time, one decision to move forward even when your mind is telling you to wait. Confidence is a side effect of keeping your word to yourself. Fear will always try to convince you that action should wait until conditions are perfect. But conditions are never perfect. Timing is never perfect. You grow into readiness by stepping into the challenge, not by avoiding it. Action sharpens you. Pressure refines you. Stillness weakens you. And let me tell you something important. Confidence is not loud. Real confidence doesn't announce itself. It's quiet. It's calm. It's rooted in experience. And experience only comes from action. You don't gain confidence by thinking about who you want to be. You gain it by behaving like that person before you feel like it. Stop asking yourself, what if I fail? Start asking, what if I don't try? Because not trying guarantees one outcome. You stay exactly where you are. Action, on the other hand, opens doors you can't see yet. You don't need the whole plan. You need the next step. Some days, action will feel uncomfortable. Good. That's how you know you're growing. Comfort doesn't build confidence. Challenge does. And every time you act despite doubt, you weaken the voice that tells you you can't. That voice only has power when you listen to it. Confidence is earned in moments no one applauds, in private decisions, in quiet discipline, in choosing to move when nobody is watching and nothing is guaranteed. That's where belief is forged. So don't wait until you feel ready. Ready is a result, not a requirement. Take the step, make the call, start the work, speak up, show up. Because action doesn't wait for confidence. Confidence is built by action. Let me tell you what a lot of people don't realize they're doing every single day. They're practicing failure in their mind over and over again. Before they even step into the moment, they've already imagined how it's going to go wrong. They've already pictured the rejection, the embarrassment, the loss. And then they wonder why they feel drained before they even begin. Your mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's repeatedly imagined. So when you keep running those negative scenarios, your body reacts like it's already happened. Stress shows up, energy drops, focus disappears. You haven't failed yet, but you've already paid the emotional price. Rehearsal is powerful. Athletes know this, performers know this, leaders know this. Whatever you rehearse, you strengthen. If you rehearse doubt, you strengthen doubt. If you rehearse fear, you strengthen fear. And if you rehearse failure, don't be surprised when hesitation shows up right on time. Most people say they want success, but mentally, they're preparing for defeat. They walk into opportunities, already bracing for impact instead of standing with intention. And when things get difficult, as they always do, they say, I knew this wouldn't work. Not because it couldn't work, but because they never gave it a fair mental chance. Let me be clear, this is not about pretending nothing can go wrong. This is about refusing to let worst-case thinking dominate your preparation. There's a difference between being aware and being consumed. Awareness helps you plan. Consumption drains your power. Every time you catch yourself imagining failure, pause. Ask yourself, why am I training my mind for an outcome I don't want? You wouldn't practice losing on purpose. You wouldn't study how to quit. Yet mentally, that's exactly what many people are doing. And then they blame circumstances when the real issue was conditioning. Your mind should be a place of preparation, not punishment. Use it to see yourself focused, see yourself responding with strength, see yourself adjusting when things don't go as planned. Success doesn't come from everything going right. It comes from how you respond when something goes wrong. Rehearse that. Pressure is coming whether you like it or not. Challenges are guaranteed. The question is, how are you training your mind to meet them? If your mental rehearsal is always disaster, your performance will reflect that. But if you rehearse resilience, discipline, and follow through, you walk in stronger, even before the outcome is decided. Stop letting your imagination work against you. It's knee of your greatest tools, but only if you aim it in the right direction. Visualization isn't wishful thinking, it's conditioning. You're setting the tone for how you show up, and how you show up matters. When you rehearse failure, you hesitate. When you rehearse success, you prepare. When you rehearse quitting, you look for exits. When you rehearse commitment, you look for solutions. Your thoughts don't just predict behavior, they shape it. You don't need to ignore challenges. You need to stop living in them before they arrive. Save your energy for action, not anxiety. Save your focus for execution, not escape plans. Train your mind the same way you train your skills, intentionally, repeatedly, with purpose. Because the moment you stop rehearsing failure is the moment you give yourself a real chance to win. Let me tell you something most people never want to admit. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is part of the process. It shows up in every life worth living, every dream worth chasing, every goal worth fighting for. But here's the catch. Pain is temporary. Quitting lasts forever. See, when life pushes you, when doors close, when challenges hit, your body reacts, your mind reacts. Pain shows up, that's natural. But it doesn't get to decide the outcome. Too many people let temporary discomfort dictate permanent decisions. They feel the sting, and they fold. They feel the pressure, and they retreat. And that's why dreams die. Not because the dream was impossible, but Oz endurance was optional in their eyes. Pain has a clock. It comes, it tests you, it teaches you, and then it leaves. But quitting rewrites your story. It stamps a period where there could have been a chapter. Quitting is permanent because every time you quit, you give up a piece of your future. Pain is momentary, but it carries lessons. Quitting is forever, and it carries regret. Let me make this clear, no growth comes without discomfort. If it were easy, everyone would do it. If it were painless, no one would need courage. Pain is a signal, not a sentence. It tells you that you're alive, that you're stretching, that you're challenging yourself. Quitting, on the other hand, is a resignation. It's a surrender to the temporary over the permanent, the weak over the strong, the fear over the faith. The people you admire, the ones who built something remarkable, didn't skip the pain. They leaned into it, they learned from it, they moved through it. Every setback, every hardship, every no they endured became fuel, became preparation, became proof that quitting wasn't an option. And that's why they finished what others started and abandoned. Pain will always try to convince you to stop. It will whisper, "This is too much, you're not strong enough. Maybe tomorrow." Listen, but don't obey. Use pain as your teacher, not your jailer. The temporary discomfort is shaping your strength. The temporary challenge is sharpening your character. The temporary struggle is building resilience that success requires. Every time you feel like giving up, remember, this moment is fleeting, but your decision to persist has permanence. This struggle is temporary, but the result of your endurance will last. Your next step, the one you're tempted to skip, is the step that separates those who succeed from those who settle. Pain tests, but quitting betrays. Pain teaches, but quitting erases. Pain shapes, but quitting destroys. One is temporary, the other is eternal. And your choice determines which story you leave behind. Endure. Push forward. Lean into the challenge. Because the moment you let quitting win, you lose a lifetime of possibilities. Listen carefully, because this is something most people completely underestimate. What you feed your mind determines your future. Your mind is like soil. If you plant weeds, weeds grow. If you plant seeds, seeds grow. And the funny thing is, your mind doesn't argue. It will nurture whatever you give it. It's obedient. And that's why so many people fail before they even start. They've been feeding negativity, doubt, and fear for years. And then they resurprise when their life reflects the same. Think about the conversations you have with yourself when no one is listening. Are they words of encouragement or words of defeat? Are you replaying your failures over and over? Or are you envisioning your victories before they happen? Because those private moments, the thoughts you think when the world isn't watching, are where your destiny is actually written. What you watch, what you read, what you listen to, who you spend time with, all of it is input for your mind. If it's negative, lazy, or limited, guess what grows? Negative, lazy, limited results. But if you're intentional about your intake, feeding your mind with inspiration, with knowledge, with examples of perseverance, with strategies for success, then your output, your actions, your decisions, your resilience will start reflecting that. Most people let their environment dictate their mind. They scroll endlessly. They let fear, doubt, and gossip set the tone of their day. And then they wonder why they feel powerless, why they can't get ahead, why life seems heavier than it should. You can't blame the world for what you've been choosing to feed your mind. The soil is yours, so choose wisely. Here's the truth: your mind grows what you water. You can't nurture dreams while constantly watering fear. You can't cultivate courage while feeding worry. You can't build a strong, disciplined life while filling your thoughts with excuses. Every habit, every thought, every mental choice is either a deposit in your future or a debt. And the balance is yours to manage. Start protecting your mind the way you would protect your most valuable asset. Because it is. Be selective with what you allow in. Challenge negative thoughts before they root. Replace doubt with curiosity. Replace worry with action. Feed your mind what it needs to grow, and watch how our actions begin to follow. And understand this isn't a one-time decision, it's daily. Every hour, every interaction, every choice is either feeding growth or feeding decay. That's the power of the mind. It doesn't take breaks, and it doesn't discriminate. What you nurture today will show up tomorrow, whether you like it or not. So ask yourself, am I feeding my mind what it needs to win, to rise, to persist, to create, or am I letting the weeds grow while hoping for a harvest? The moment you take responsibility for what you feed your mind is the moment your future starts changing. Because what you feed your mind today becomes the life you live tomorrow. Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. Growth doesn't happen in comfort, not in ease, not in safety, not while everything is predictable and familiar. Growth begins where comfort ends. And that's why so many people never reach their potential. They stay in what's easy, what's convenient, what's familiar, and they call it safe. But safe doesn't build strength. Safe doesn't build vision. Safe doesn't build character. See, comfort is seductive. It whispers to you, stay here, it's fine. Don't risk too much, don't push too hard. And for a while you listen. It feels good, it feels easy. But comfort is quiet. Its price is slow, invisible. And over time you realize you're not just comfortable, you're stuck, you're stagnant. You've settled for the version of yourself that is convenient instead of courageous. Real growth demands you leave that space. It demands risk. It demands that you do things you're afraid of, that you speak when it's hard, that you try when failure is possible, that you endure when quitting seems easier. Growth is not polite. Growth is uncomfortable. It tests you. It challenges you. It stretches you until you feel like you might break. And then, and only then, it reshapes you. Think about the people you admire, the people who achieved what most others thought was impossible. Their lives weren't built on comfort. They were built on challenges, pressure, late nights, early mornings, and moments where they had to act, even when every part of them wanted to quit. They learned to embrace the discomfort because they understood the truth. If you never leave comfort, you never grow. And here's the thing about discomfort. It's temporary. The lessons it teaches last a lifetime. The resilience it builds becomes permanent. The courage it forces you to summon becomes part of who you are. But the longer you cling to comfort, the longer you delay your own transformation. Every time you choose ease over effort, you're putting off the life you're capable of living. So don't misunderstand this. You're not being reckless. You're being intentional. You're not chasing pain for its own sake. You're chasing growth. You're chasing mastery. You're chasing a version of yourself that your comfort zone will never allow. Growth is always just beyond the line where you stop feeling safe, where you stop feeling confident, where you stop feeling sure. That's where the real work happens. It's going to be hard. It's going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to feel fear and fatigue. That's normal. That's the point. The moment you lean into it anyway, the moment you keep moving despite the resistance, that's when transformation begins. Comfort is the enemy of progress. Challenge is the friend of potential. Decide today which one you're going to follow. Because the moment you step beyond comfort is the moment you start becoming unstoppable. Now listen carefully, because this is where everything comes together. You have to decide who you are before life decides for you. Too many people drift through life waiting for a job, a title, a relationship, or a circumstance to define them. They wait for someone else to give them permission, to hand them identity, to tell them they're enough. And while they wait, life passes by. Here's the truth. Nobody is coming to rescue you. Nobody is coming to label you worthy. The world doesn't care if you're ready. The world doesn't care if you're confident. The world doesn't care if you have doubts or fears. Life will keep moving. And if you haven't made a decision about who you are and what you're willing to fight for, someone else will make that decision for you. And most of the time, it won't be in your favor. Deciding who you are starts with owning your mind, your actions, and your purpose. It starts with answering the hard questions before anyone else asks them. What do you stand for? What will you tolerate? What are you willing to endure to reach your goals? The answers aren't found in your circumstances. They're found in your choices. You define yourself by the decisions you make, not by the situations you're in. People spend so much energy trying to impress others, trying to conform, trying to be what someone else wants them to be. And in that process, they lose themselves. They wait for affirmation from the wrong places instead of finding it within. Confidence, purpose, resilience, all of it starts when you stop negotiating your identity with the world and start owning it for yourself. This is where greatness is born. The moment you decide who you are, everything else starts to fall into place. Your actions become intentional. Your mind becomes disciplined. Your thoughts align with your goals. And suddenly the noise of doubt, fear, and negativity loses power because you know exactly who you are and what you're capable of. You have to choose courage over comfort. You have to choose action over hesitation. You have to choose commitment over convenience. Deciding who you are isn't a one-time choice, it's a daily practice. Every decision, every thought, every action either affirms who you've decided to be or chips away at it. Be intentional. Be relentless. Be unapologetic about your identity and your purpose. Because when you take that responsibility seriously, when you decide your character before life tests it, when you define yourself before the world tries to define you, you become unstoppable. The moment you decide who you are is the moment no circumstance can shake you.